Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. Today we talk about managing transitions. We've all been through one transition or another in life, and depending on how well we manage them, we either come out stronger and thrive, or we deem this transition as the end for us. My guest today is Pastor Esther Edwards. She is a coach, pastor, avid learner, and developer of people. Esther believes your life and leadership deserve to be embraced with purpose, enjoyment, and intentionality for lasting resilience and impact. Esther has served in leadership for over 35 years and knows how a leader can feel stuck when approaching new seasons. She serves as a thought partner in those shifting seasons of life where greater self-awareness, alignment with one's strengths and values, and increased clarity are needed to move forward with confidence. Esther is an ICF, CCLC, and AGCC Certified Coach, serves as a coach trainer, and is currently a doctoral student of leadership with global perspectives at George Fox University. Esther loves traveling, hiking, reading, and experiencing new coffee shops. Oh, I'm up there with her. She enjoys the journey with her husband, Keith, their 4 daughters, sons-in-law, and their 4 beautiful grandchildren. Esther Edwards, welcome to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast.
Oh, Modesta, I am so honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for accepting this invitation. Now, before we get into the meat of today's episode, I'd like to remind our listeners, we now have a brand new YouTube channel. The Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast is now on YouTube in its own separate channel. We'll welcome you to subscribe to that channel. We also welcome you to rate and review the podcast wherever it is that you listen to it. And this is something else we'd like you to do. Send us an audio with questions or comments about the podcast, whether it's something that you want addressed as a separate podcast, or we could even have an entire topic that we will take from your questions and shape a conversation around. So you can send your questions and comments to operations@modestamahiga.com. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode on managing transitions with Esther Edwards. My first question to you is, when we're talking about transitions, what exactly do you mean?
That's a great question, because we hear the word a lot, but there's a lot to transition. I want to start, first of all, by saying there's a difference between change and transition. So life happens, right? Mm-hmm. Change is all around us. Change is part of life. Mm-hmm. So change is what happens externally to us. You're hired for a new job. The organization you work for merges with another company. Mm-hmm. You start school. A relative passes away. A new person is added to your work team. On and on and on. Change happens to us, whether we want it or not. Mm-hmm. But transition is really what we face internally. It's here that we can either be transformed, or we can just allow the change to happen, and we really regress in some ways. We can become bitter, we can become resistant, or we can just stagnate. So this whole realm of transition, really, for me, just on a personal level, just the last 5 years, it seemed like there was a tsunami of transition in my life, of change. And it was there that I began to really dig deeper as to what is going on with me, especially internally. Mm-hmm. So I am thrilled to just address this subject with you. I think it's so important for any leader on any level, well, for any person, but still, when you lead others, we often think we have to have it together, and really don't. And it's unnerving, especially those in midlife seasons, that you can feel like you're becoming unglued. So we'll get more into that, but transition is really what goes on beneath the surface of the change. So it's interesting. Right now, I am committing much of my research to really delving more into midlife transitions. And it's interesting because really what we used to think of midlife was we thought of it as the midlife crisis. We thought of it as, like starting in the 40s, maybe somehow getting into the 50s. But it has really changed now that our lifespans are longer. And it's really become, it's not really a time period. It's really a mindset.
Ooh.
So midlife denotes a mindset where you're shifting from climbing the success ladder to more of an internal questioning of, I want more purpose. I want to contribute. I want to invest. And so actually the midlife season can be anywhere from the 40s to the 70s because it's a mindset. So a really interesting author for me has been Bruce Feiler. And he talks about life transitions as disruptors. So these are events in your life that redirect you in some way, shape, or form. And they can happen anytime in life, right? They can be small, can be a fender bender with your car. It makes you have to get a new car, adjust to that, a rule change. They can be small, but then they can also be larger. You're getting a new job, so all these different disruptors that kind of change your life and they're unexpected. And then he talks about the large transitions, and he calls them life quakes. The disruptors, you can have, probably 3 dozen or more in a lifetime. A life quake, usually people can go maybe to 3 to 5 in a lifetime. Now think of the pandemic, right? That was a life quake. So we're talking a life quake is something that so shakes you to the core. That can be a death of a child or a spouse, a divorce, some kind of a whole career change. So the thing is, these kinds of transitions, they can be predictable or unpredictable, but still most life quakes are not predictable.
Yeah.
So, it's really important that we look at transition and we manage them. So you talked about that in your opening, like managing them well. What does that really mean? Because it's a lot of times transitions throw us for a loop.
You said a couple of things that are now, how our minds work. So now I'm now reflecting on my own life and I'm reflecting all the different changes that I've been through. And so from the, for the first statement that you said, that, look, change is what happens externally and change will come, but transitions is what happens internally. And I'm guessing it takes a level of awareness. I am facing a change and therefore need to be in a place where I can take ownership of managing my transition.
Yeah.
But often, like you said, this tsunami, this quake of a transition, like what the pandemic did, we're just fighting for our dear lives, and most of the times fighting for our lives actually means maintaining status quo.
It's interesting, the life quakes take about 3 to 5 years to weather. So you think of some of the things that happen to us in life and we expect to get over them very quickly. And I think part of managing well is allowing us to really feel it and process it and live it and take time to, allow the whole process to unfold. So one of the things you say in your mantra, Modesta, is leadership success is determined by how well you lead yourself first to effectively influence people, organizational, and market results.
Yeah.
And that is so foundational. but how do we lead ourselves when we don't know where we're going? Like in these times of transitions, it is so unnerving because we don't know the outcomes. We don't understand sometimes what's going on. So one of the things I wanted to just bring out in this podcast was, there's just so much to unpack here, but something that has really helped me is a model that actually many businesses use in organizational change and transition, but it's by William Bridges. Kind of the guru on the transition model. And he likens it to a bridge. So you actually have 3 parts of the bridge. So if you can envision a bridge in your mind, and oftentimes when I'm coaching someone through a transition, I will have them actually pick a bridge off of Google, like find a bridge that really like that symbolizes what you're feeling and going through at this point in your life, So the model, so he talks about number 1, before you even set foot on the bridge. So you're not, the other side is when the transition is complete and the new is beginning, right? So before you even step foot on the bridge, this is the time where you're contemplating or you're, what this is, if you're thinking of maybe a role change or a job change, career change, relationship change. But before you cross the bridge, you begin with an ending. So in our organizational context of churches, we often have global workers that they've decided they're going to go to another country, going to do missions work, right? So in the past, they would just be sent without any kind of understanding. They knew they're excited about what's going to happen, but what they hadn't done was really look on what they will lose. Now, in a lot of their training, they take extensive time to really think about what they will lose. So before you even cross the bridge, it's about facing what you'll lose, the old ways of doing things, the old roles, even the emotional attachments to the past. This is often accompanied by feelings of loss and uncertainty, but also acknowledging and celebrating what was. So you can imagine in a major organization that is trying to do a full revamp of something. What's really healthy to do is to allow the people of the organization to think about what was and allow them to voice it, not to be scared of it, because then you're like, oh, they're not going to want to change. Well, it's actually healthy for them to really, look back and say, wow, that was great. Oh, that was not so great, and this is what I'll miss. So rule number 2 the number 2 of, he calls it a rule, he goes rule 1, rule 2, but is the neutral zone. And that is, you're on the bridge. You're in betwixt and in between, right? And there's a lot of confusion in the middle and ambiguity. He calls it a no man's land. You're between the old way of doing things and the new. It's very disorienting. A sense of limbo for a long time. Especially major life changes. I've coached quite a few business leaders around this that are contemplating, the new, and feel like, I'm going crazy. I'm really going crazy. And especially in the midlife season, because everything that was doesn't seem familiar anymore. And you're knowing new has to come, but you just don't understand it yet. So it's time to face emotions. And one of the most inhibiting emotions there is in this season is fear. Fear of what will be, fear of, what if I'm not good enough? What if I can't do this? So it's time to face the negative internal dialogue. It's time to look at one's strengths and build confidence. It's time to embrace values, your particular values, the organization's particular values, so that you can build on what is really intrinsic in and is important to the leader or to the organization. So I coached someone once, and actually she said that I could share this. I called her, and it's her name is Melanie, and she had, this was early on in my coaching, and so I was looking for people to coach, and so she was a small business owner, and I said, could I just coach you for an hour? And she's like, sure. So I had no idea what she was going to bring to the table, but we met at a Starbucks, and she just said to me, you know what? I am really, I don't know why I've had my business for quite a few years. It's done really well, but I really want to give it up. I am just like I've had quite a few employees leave. I had my one main person leave, and she said, I just don't know what to do next. And I really want to invest in people. I have a heart to really serve my community, serve, globally. And she says, and I feel really stuck. Mm. And so we processed through just what her values were, what her strengths were, just in a short amount of time, and what she really wanted on the other side. And what was it about the past that wasn't fitting well? Mm-hmm. So out of that 1 hour session, and that's what makes me excited about coaching, because coaching really just works. And so in that small session, we just charted out a whole new marketing scheme of how she would move forward. And she delved in with, now in her case, her transition, she decided not to move out, and but she decided to change the whole way she did things. All of her employees were more young adults, and so her whole paradigm changed too, to really build them into leaders. So she showed them how to do the books of the business. She showed them how to manage other employees, and really her model became much more of an investment in her employees. So so it was in that neutral zone of feeling very like, I don't know whether to go backwards or go forward. Like, I don't know whether I want to change totally. So the neutral zone really unpacks all that. So that's on top of the bridge. And then as you have gained more of that internal hard work and insight and self-awareness on that bridge, when you step to the other side, you are much more prepared to embrace a new reality. And that's where the word transformation comes into play. You are no longer the same. Understanding and accepting the change and creating new routines and gaining confidence, it will give you a renewed sense of purpose and energy for the new.
This is so powerful, so powerful. As a change management practitioner, a lot of what we help clients through is that seeming resistance to change. And there's a change model that I often speak from. It's from this gentleman called Jeffrey Hyatt. It's called ADKAR, awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and then reinforcement, right? Like, these are critical if you're going to help your people through change. That desire element, now I'm hearing you say, what happens is there's an external stimulus,
yes,
but then people are not either empowered or even permitted, right, to really reflect on what is going on and how they are reacting, to that. Like I said, that a person might think, well, if we're going to go and start, reflecting on this, people might want to stay with the status quo. But you're saying this is critical if they are to effectively manage their transition. And I don't think we do this. We're not even, honestly, I know this may not be, this is completely unrelated to organizations, and some people might just be put off with this, but I am imagining, I am relating this to labor pangs, okay? That if you are not aware and do not choose to face the reality of what you're going through.
Right.
Those just keep hitting you. I mean, they're going to hurt you anyway, but there's a way you can get on the front end of this and learn what it takes to then ride out the transition, right? So the acceptance of where you are and the willingness to hear yourself talk about what you're letting go of and how you think that's affecting you, so that you can then get to a place and start imagining what the future can be. Now, I want to, if you'll allow me, relate this to leadership.
Yes.
It's one thing for an individual to go through, and you said up to 15 transitions, in a lifetime, major transitions in a lifetime. So we're going through many transitions anyway, daily. And then each person can go through up to 15 major transitions. Imagine a leader who is not effectively managing their own transitions of their lives, right? How on earth do they show up to hold the space for people to effectively manage the transitions that come with the workplace? Right? Because they cannot lead people through anything they're themselves not going through. So in the workplace, they'll just end up being an enforcer regardless of where people are at, without understanding there is this bridge that people are meant to go through, and it is okay. Matter of fact, it is critical.
Yes.
That's transitioning. So what would you advise a leader to do?
Well, I believe today there is a lot more help involved, and a lot more, a lot of leaders are embracing coaching, and, coaching is very different than consulting. So a consultant will come in and just tell you how to do things, and it's good. It has its place, but having a coach helps the leader process that, not only possibly the organizational part of it, but how they are showing up in the midst of it. So that is a helpful thing that I find a lot more leaders are okay with asking for help. But for those that aren't, that is tough, because if the leader themselves are not understanding the process of transition and how deeply it affects people, you can change things, but it may not necessarily be transformative. Because you think of the businesses where there's just such an energy and an excitement amongst the workers. And then there are others where the workers show up, and they clock their time, but they're definitely not invested on a molecular level. And that comes from really buy-in of, them having a voice. So, I mean, there are many differences in the ministry realm, but there are also many likenesses. So, for instance, we've been pastors for over 35 years. My husband and I, my husband, the lead pastor, but we just recently took our church from a 6-year-old building into a mobile situation, because we were moving to a new place. So 3 years mobile, very tough, especially for a congregation that has been just in one place for so long. And how did we do that with a lot of unity is that we celebrated the past, and we allowed people to voice their concerns, what they would lose. And, we had a big celebration before we left the building, and had people stand and just share what they would really miss. And there was this sense of acknowledgement and voice. Doesn't mean that you won't have still people complaining or, employees complaining, but it eliminates a lot of that. So leading out of your own, and I think the leaders that are healthier are the ones that address their own personal feelings involved as well.
In that workplace transition, right?
Yes.
So true.
So really, the leader does make a big difference. The leader that will just initiate change and not allow people to have buy-in and voice, the people will still do it because they want to get paid, right? So they'll still be a part, but they won't be totally as invested. Yeah. And what you want to do is change a culture and have a culture of total buy-in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is no easy way about this. Change is always hard. But it does take intentionality in processing it. And that's where the key is. It's in the middle, on that bridge, where you can delve deeper. And I'm finding as I unpack I'm doing a lot of research on the midlife transition, as I said, and that's where it's very unnerving for people. Doesn't matter who you are, what leadership role you have. It will hit you somewhere along the line that life is changing and you have to change as well, and you have to transform along with it. And it's much deeper. It takes a lot of intentionality of allowing your thoughts to really process on a deep level.
I think this episode may be the exemplary conversation on what this 360 leadership concept is.
Yes.
The leader themselves, because I often say, well, there is really no personal professional divide. You come as a whole person, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, relational, financial, all kinds of areas, your professional impact and legacy and what you're doing in communities. And this all makes who you are, and any one of these areas is compromised, and it'll show, no matter how well you try to keep up a facade. And now we're in a work context where it's a meeting place of people who themselves are going through different types of transitions.
Yes.
And imagine if they're not equipped to manage those transitions, they come together to a workplace that has its own transitions. And leaders absolutely must be equipped and must have the willingness. I like what you said at the very beginning, that we no longer expect leaders to be, the be all and end all, and they have all the answers and they're infallible. Increasingly so, people are allowed to be human. People are allowed to be exemplary in the struggles they're facing, so that others can also put down their guards and do the same. But wow, I thank you for sharing this and saying the first place for a leader that wants to effectively help their organization, their people manage transitions, is to get support to manage their own. And not talking about just the workplace transitions, manage their own life transitions. Understand that then everybody else is going through similar things.
Yes. I can say that, in the coaching realm, why coaching has become so powerful. Let me just address this. Not because I'm trying to push coaching, but what coaching does is it gives a sacred space where you have someone else as a thought partner and you just process. And how many of the leaders we know, they're so busy with so many things, take time to just listen to what is going on in their own heads. And so the processing part is really powerful to give space to that. It gives clarity, it gives understanding, and it gives confidence.
Yeah.
So I knew of one high level leader, and he had a coach that was just he would pay money every month to have a coach. And the coach says, well, do you still need me? And what that leader said was, it's the only place I have to totally have a partner with my thoughts. And he said, I crave that 1 hour every hour. Many times he did it twice a month or once a month. He said, because it just brings clarity to my living. And so there is something to be said, about times of reflection, meditation, and really thinking through what you yourself are going through as a leader, so that you can show up with much more confidence and clarity.
This is so good. This is so good. And as a coach myself, I'm not going to say I'm going to agree with you, right? That coaching really does that. And when leaders actually when leaders allow somebody else to come in, and I love the way you put it, right? As a thought partner, to create a safe space, that's an investment into their own um, personal professional development, but it also ends up impacting their family, their team,
Yes.
exponentially. This is, I mean, I am truly struggling here because I am processing this conversation, and I wish I could just have a coaching conversation with you on the side instead of have to be on this podcast where we have to keep things moving along. But such is the power of making time to ask yourself not what's going on externally. That could be very clear. It was COVID-19, so that was very clear what was going on externally. But inside me, what am I interpreting this to be? Right? You talk about as soon as you say midlife, I'm going to finish that sentence with crisis. Most people, as soon as you say midlife, somebody will say crisis. That's what we associate with midlife. So if that is midlife, and then you're going through your midlife, you feel like everything's been taken off from underneath you, and you're saying, but it doesn't have to be.
It's interesting. All the research that I have been doing is crisis. The word crisis is really is now being taken away from that season, because it's not. It used to be that was kind of how it was termed, but it is not. It really is a powerful, powerful season of, if we allow it to be transformative. So there is the dark night of the soul in the middle of that. There is the feeling of being unnerved, but there's also new awakenings and new dreamings. And, what was, we celebrate, or we reframe if it was negative. That's a time where you can reframe things. So there's so much power in that season to really just go deeper on so many levels, and become the best version of yourself. So as I've been doing much research, I'm finding that it is a hard season. It brings much ambiguity and questioning and feeling like things are it's unnerving. But there are people later and later in life now are embracing new visions and new dreams. And so it's really quite exciting.
This is so exciting. And it's revolutionary as well. Because what made it so daunting is that people felt like they're now preparing to die.
What is so interesting is, Bruce Feiler mentions this in his book, and I really thought this was powerful. We've always thought of life as linear. I should say he makes mention of it like in the old days, like centuries ago, it was kind of secular because of the farming cycle and everything else. Thinking that, or it was a stair step, you get to the top in midlife, and then so it's all downhill from there, right? Everything seems linear to us, like these life stages of moving on towards old age. But really, life has become very nonlinear in our global society. So like, I just got my master's at 58 years of age. So to me, 20 years ago, that would have been like that person doing that would have been really out of the ordinary. Now it's part of life. You have people starting businesses at the age of in their 60s, so it's become a non-linear kind of thing where you're just, I shouldn't say kind of thing, that sounds so ambiguous. It's non-linear in that we're no longer just, okay, in your 20s, you need to do this, in your 30s, you need to do this, in your 40s, you need to do this, there are so many more options and opportunities that, and actually Bruce Feiler says the linear world is dead, the way we look at life linearly. But I think there is still some linearism to it, but much more open to new opportunities at all ages. So it's quite exciting.
And this is why you said it's a mindset. You said midlife is
Yeah.
is a mindset. This transition is a mindset.
Yes, I talked to a friend who he said, by the time I was in my 40s, I was an empty nester because we got married young. So for him, the midlife to older seasons seemed to start at 40. Whereas, you know, for someone else, they get married later in life. Their midlife could start at 60. You know what I mean? So it is a mindset. It also has to do with just the transition things around you, you know, like there's aging parents. There's just so many things that happen in that stage of life that cause a tsunami of transition. So, but it's what's hope filled is that there, if you look at it as a time to process and really grow deeper and be more intentional, there's so much more to life that's coming. And so you don't have to think of it as downhill.
No, not at all. Actually, it gets you excited to then embrace
Yes.
times of reflection, to bring a thought partner along and say, hey, you know, it looks like one season is ending. I'm excited to have somebody, you know, come alongside me to help me imagine what the next could be. Rather
Yes.
than just mourn and what, you know, wonder what happens to me now.
Yeah.
Right? So it makes you want to approach this, makes you want to go through the process and to help other people to do the same, because
Yeah.
there will be a renewal, there will be a rebirth, there will be an evolution, and maybe even new things that you never thought you were or could do can be birthed from it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
This is exciting. I have to go back and listen to this again because we go through so many transitions. You said, you know, small ones, mediums, and some are large, and some we may be aware of and get on the front end of them. Some of them maybe we're too overwhelmed and we bury them, but they're
Yeah.
still playing out. You know, this is
Yeah.
making me want to go back as a leader and think through, because I've also been through a couple of transitions in a health, and what I am doing with those, and just this three rule through a, you know, a bridge analogy is a great way, I think, to work through
Yeah.
them.
Yes. And what I didn't touch a lot on, but has great power, is there is, you know, taking the neutral zone to also look at your past, like you said, the things that you really kind of shoved under the carpet, to look at your narrative, to celebrate that, but then also to reframe those things that really were hard and negative. Because there are many of us that live with such regret over certain things, when if we were to go back, you know, and revisit it in light of who you are today, it would lose its powerful grip on us. And so there is just so much even there in the processing of that neutral zone, to come to grips with what does not serve us well, you know, anymore. What served me well then, or whatever negative happened, you know, addressing it, and then allow it to be fuel for, you know, health, future health.
So good.
Yeah.
And it's this reframing that you're talking about, that look at it and look at what you're calling it, right? What you've labeled it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
can you change perspectives? Because then all of a sudden that season ending will not, because sometimes we're so stuck in regret of what could have been, and we wish we could do something about the past, and so we're constantly there.
Yes. Yes.
Should we reframe and be able to let go,
Oh,
then, and not just reframe the past, but even reframe what is coming in the future, even if it seems ambiguous, right? Like it's an adventure, what's coming on. I think it's things like that that help you through the transition, because often it's not what happens to us, but what we think about what's happening.
Ah, very true. Thought process is what's crucial. The intentional unpacking and delving into the thought process is so important in the neutral zone.
So good, so good. Oh, Pastor Esther, I would love to continue having this conversation forever. If anybody actually knows of you and I, we actually could continue this conversation forever. If
Yes.
people would like to reach out to you, and I think people would after this, what can our 360 leadership community reach out to you for, and where can they find you?
Well, our website is enjoythejourneyleadershipcoaching.com. And we offer coaching. My husband and I have the business together. We offer, 1 hour sessions of coaching. We do leadership coaching, life coaching, but then also we are coach trainers. And this is an area that has just been exploding for us. We really think every leader should be trained in coaching skills, because it really teaches you to listen better, to engage more with your whoever you are leading, your employees. And then it helps you to really ask questions and not just tell people what to do. Allow them to have a voice and embrace for themselves the direction they need to go. So we offer leadership, our coach training. And so those are some of the things we offer. So yes, enjoy the journey, leadershipcoaching.com.
So good. And we're going to make sure to have that link on the description of this episode as well. Ooh, Pastor Esther, Coach Esther Edwards. Dr. Esther Edwards soon. I am so excited for you and your doctorate. And
you know what? Oh,
yeah.
I have to tell you, I gave you the wrong website. Oh, it's enjoythejourneycoaching.com.
We've got you. Enjoythejourneycoaching.com. We'll just make sure we'll put the right link on the description.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, I look forward to hearing people reaching out to you for coaching for themselves, but I love the coach training aspect, because truly every leader could benefit from helping coaching their people through transitions, and just any other aspect of their group or organization. So thank you again for joining us on the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast, Esther Edwards.
All right, thank you so much. It's been an honor, Modesta.
Oh, it's the honor's been mine. I think we need to have a part 2.
That would be great.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to have a part 2, and I'll look at how to go into some of the areas that you said. Okay, I wish we had more time.
Yes.
On managing transition, and especially the how-tos, right? The models, but also the practical day-to-days, what that looks like for the leader and the leader with their teams.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Our phenomenal listeners, thank you again for tuning in to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. I'd like to ask you once more to rate and review the podcast and share it with others too. We're on LinkedIn Live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, and that is 8 p.m. East African Time. So you can connect with me live on LinkedIn on the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. Again, remember, you can email us the topics or an audio with questions or comments, and we'll either just create an entire podcast to answer those questions, or create a topic and a guest conversation around some of your questions and comments. So thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next episode.